Welcome to the Rainy Day Rabbit Holes podcast, your escape from the mundane.
Dive into the rich history of the Pacific Northwest with us and let your mind wander down the rabbit hole.
Because in the Northwest, it's always raining something weird. I am Shea.
And I'm Jody. Let's fall down the rabbit hole.
Jody, have you ever thought about what might happen to your body when you die?
Actually, I've thought about it a lot, and I've gone through phases of what I want to happen to my actual physical body.
What do you think you'd like to happen to your body when you go?
Well, recently I've decided I want to be composted because I have always wanted to not take up space. So I originally wanted to be cremated, so I don't want to take up space on this earth when I'm dead.
You don't want real estate for your body?
Don't come visit me somewhere because I'm not there.
Right.
That's just the gross parts of me. Go
This is your meat sack that's now
and with no meat
decaying.
left. So I heard about composting a while back. I've never looked into it, but I think that's exactly what I'd want. I want to go back to the earth and be part of the process of renewing something.
Yeah. Well, and also learning about how bad for the environment cremation is was really eye-opening for me. So first off, it takes a ton of energy because you have to get that furnace up to like 2,000 degrees or something ridiculous to fully burn the body. It does not fully burn your body, by the way. No, it burns all the soft tissue, but your bones are left.
That's why it's futile to try to burn somebody's body in the backyard to hide it.
Yeah, the bones will still be there.
Yeah.
So I learned recently, too, that what they do is these crematoriums have a pulverizer. So it's basically like a giant food processor that they put your bones in and grind them up and then try to scrape out as much as possible out of that pulverizer to put with the rest of the ashes that they have scraped out of the furnace. Now, ashes fall into bricks, and those furnaces are usually lined with bricks. If you've ever processed like nuts in a food processor, you cannot get all the nut dust out of there.
Right.
So imagine that's your remains. And then the next person comes in. Oh. So everybody's cremains are mixed with the person who was before them. So that's a little disturbing. Like, I don't really want to be mixed with Mrs. Jones. I didn't know her.
Right.
She might have been a terrible person. She might have been MAGA.
It's so fun. Oh, God, eternity with MAGA. Oh, God.
Sorry, I've been on the internet a lot lately. It's making me angry.
My soul just turned over in its grave and it ain't even dead yet. Oh my gosh. You know what's interesting though about those ashes? That's just the expectation. They're just going to get mixed together, blah, blah, blah. When Keith's grandparents passed away, first his grandma passed away and she was cremated and his grandpa kept her ashes at the home. And then with the eventual plan that when he died, he would get cremated, we would mix their ashes and then turn them together.
Well, that's nice.
Isn't that nice? And they wouldn't let us do it. There's like a law against mixing the ashes.
Mixing ashes?
In fact, we had to get special permission to put them in the same hole.
Well, that's weird.
Yeah, it was weird. Or wait, maybe did we need permission to mix them and they didn't let it? I can't remember. Basically, it was a big deal to mix them and I was stunned by that.
Huh.
So, but if they had just been cremated one after the other, then it would have been fine, apparently.
Right. They would have been mixed up anyways, also like 5 of 6 other people.
Yes. Oh, God, that's so funny. He was so antisocial. I wonder if he he's mixed with other people. Okay, we're going to hell.
Well, okay, we'll stop there. Okay. Well, so a lot of you guys might be wondering what composting is and what this has to do with the Pacific Northwest and our podcast. Here in Washington State, we're actually really lucky because we're one of the first states to legalize human remains composting. And one of the biggest facilities in the state that does this is actually about a 10-minute drive from where we are recording right now. Well, maybe 15. It's Kent.
Oh, wow.
And I desperately want to go there and tour it.
Yeah.
So I was interested in this and I emailed them, through the contact form. And so now I get emails about planning my funeral constantly.
Oh, no, how depressing.
But I wanted to see how much it was. And this one facility, it runs about $5,000. So it's definitely more than cremation. I think cremation is anywhere between $1,500 and $2,500.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really amazing, though, is unlike your fruits and vegetables that you throw into your compost bin, in the yard, a human body can be fully composted in 30 to 60 days.
That's insane.
The methods they use. So they have a facility that has all these, it's basically like human-sized compost tumblers. And they put down a layer of straw and wood chips and other organic material. And then they lay your body in there and they put more of this organic material on you. And then they seal it up. There is a vent, of course, because you have to vent.
Gases that come from breakdown.
Yeah, gases and heat. So all the bacteria in there that are now eating away at all the organic material.
Like a bacterial, they don't throw like some in there in addition, or do they?
I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
I think we should go tour this facility next year and talk to them. The guy who gave the tour on this podcast, Science Versus, that I listened to at the Kent facility sounds like our people. He sounds like a delight. I mean, he's laughing as he's walking through this thing. And they also would allow you, if you wanted to have them lay special flowers, like you could bring, like, let's say your favorite flower is a dahlia or something. What's your favorite flower?
Tulips.
I thought so.
The first one pop up in the spring. Hope is on the way.
There you go. So I would say, well, Jody loves tulips. And so I would give them tulips and they could put tulips inside the composter on your body.
Oh,
which is very nice.
That is.
And they will allow loved ones to go visit the composter while it's going. And on this podcast, she said that people will go in and bring a cup of coffee to sit on top of the composter and sit there and talk to their loved one while they're working away. And apparently, if you put your hand over the vent, you feel like massive heat. They said it could get up to like 140 degrees in there from the heat. And then when you're done, you get about a dozen bags of compost back.
Wow.
That is your remains. And
a dozen bags. So you could because my thoughts are you plant a tree somewhere and use the compost or
more than one tree for sure.
Right. But you could spread this out. I could give it to all my grandkids.
Yeah, that's my thought.
I don't know if that's morbid or not, but
well,
here's grandma forever.
Right.
We're that close.
I thought this was excellent because I'm thinking about my mom, and my mom and I have talked about this, and she's fully on board. My mom loves her garden.
She's only going to get 6 bags.
I know, she's so little. Mom, you didn't go very far. I had to go out and buy more compost at Home Depot.
Yard. She is not going to.
Well, I got her into hostas when she moved up here. And so she's really into propagating her hostas now. And so my idea is take the compost that is my mom. And then hostas are great because you can break them up into clumps and then each clump will grow into its own individual plant. So I can take one of her favorite hostas, break up clumps, and then plant those in each individual little pots and then give the pot of the hosta that's been fertilized with my mom.
Yeah. That's what
to people that loved her. And then if they don't keep the plant alive, they'll feel really bad.
Right. That's what I was just thinking. Oh my gosh. I would fail. Here I am thinking I need to give this to my grandkids. And I'm like, I would totally let that thing die.
You let grandma die again.
That's so much responsibility.
So much pressure.
Although the soil's still there. You can just plant another plant, right?
That's true. That's true. Now, they said that all of the composted remains go through some bacterial testing. So they test to make sure that there's no dangerous bacteria or viruses in the soil, because that's a concern. If somebody dies of a communicable disease, can that be passed on through the soil? And I think the consensus is pretty much no.
Right. I wonder if the Black Plague is that.
I think that they said that almost all contagions die in this process because the heat's pretty intense. 140 degrees is enough to kill a lot of viruses.
Well, that's when some of your meat is ready to eat.
Right. Exactly. Oh, God. So funnily enough, when they were researching this process, some of the researchers wrapped up a roast and put it inside the composter and cooked a roast in there for 5 or 6. Yeah, they said it was delicious.
See, I told you. So yes, definitely. Are these researchers the ones that are working at the one in Kent so that we can all get because clearly we're all of the same mind.
The people who pioneered this are University of Washington people.
Wow.
So I think we need to track these people down and talk to them and tell them how much we love their twisted sense of humor.
Right.
But they do, they test. So they do recommend that you don't fertilize edible plants with it, just in case, just out of an abundance of caution, though they don't think that there's any problem. And I think also it's just more a little creepy.
Right. Having that carrot.
Like grandma's tasting crispy today.
Grandma, you did a really good job on this carrot.
But I think it's lovely because then when my mom goes, I can use this on my plants. And every time I'm out there taking care of them, I can talk to my mom.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that'd be great. Now, the only problem is we did for Keith's grandma when she passed away, she didn't want a funeral and all the hoopla. So what we did was we went and got a lilac bush, nice, pretty one, planted it in our yard and had a little ceremony. And then we moved.
Right.
So it's like we can drive by.
Yeah, that's a problem. So you'd have to at least have a couple potted plants that you use it on so that you can take those with. And then the rest you just be like, she loved it here.
Yeah. That's a great idea. I love this idea. We do need to track them down. I've always wanted, my biggest goal is how do I take up the least space as a dead person?
Yes.
Like, can I at least be buried without a casket? And that's a no. So this is the best alternative.
Yeah, I think that there's a push to start allowing, I can't remember what they called it, but it's basically just allowing you to be buried without a casket, a coffin, or any kind of embalming. I think there's a push, and it's probably here in Washington State. I think we were pioneers with stuff like this. I just think it's better for the environment. It's sure $5,000 is a lot of money, but the normal funeral now is anywhere from $8,000 to $15,000 when you factor in you're paying $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 for these caskets. And then you're having to pay for all the cars. You're having to pay for the use of the funeral home, for them to set up a tent and chairs, for them to bury the body. Then you're paying for the plot. So you're in $30,000.
Right. It's ridiculous. And I don't want that for anyone. I'm not going to need my money when I die. I don't want it going. That just seems weird to me to put it there. And also I want to, if I'm thinking about, like you said with your mom, I get to go visit with her or whatever. It's their life continuing on. It's still giving life.
Yes.
And I love that.
Yeah, that's what I really love about it. So I'm putting it here on the record.
Yeah.
If there's ever any confusion, if any of you are listening and for something has happened to me and I go, Shea wants to be composted.
Yes, I will make sure Shea.
And then I want everybody to get
I don't know. I'm saying that. You're so much younger than me. Shea, putting this on record. I want to be composted.
Well, I am having surgery soon. And
you
there's
stop
always
that.
a chance.
You stop that.
Well, this conversation is a great tie-in. Just ties in beautifully with today's featured episode. We are featuring an episode of the Audibly Haunted podcast hosted by my friend, Ani Khajadourian.
She should be everybody's friend.
She is. Also, we want her to narrate all audiobooks. Between her and your husband, that's all we need.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
Should we just start an audiobook company and it's just them?
Oh my gosh, we could.
I'll produce.
Is it weird that we want to hook up Ani and my husband? So we can just listen to them talk?
I know. It would be really weird if we had them read the Bigfoot erotica that I'm planning on writing. I should write that when I'm hopped up on painkillers from the surgery. See what happens.
We can get your phone hooked up so you can dictate.
See what comes out.
Right.
Yeah, because I will only have one hand.
Right, but you can just close your eyes and go.
And get right into my weird imagination. My weird, sick imagination.
I wonder what it's going to be like on drugs.
You know you want to be there when I wake up.
Yes.
You might have to. So this episode is titled The All-American Funeral. Ani's gripping storytelling takes us on a journey through the evolution of funeral practices in America, from at-home care for the deceased to the rise of the modern funeral home. Ani has a unique talent for weaving historical facts with compelling narratives, creating an audio experience that's both educational and deeply engaging. Her ability to bring the past to life through her words is truly remarkable, and we know you'll be as enthralled as we were when we first heard this episode. And we're also thrilled to announce that next week, we will be sharing a special collaboration episode we recorded with Ani. In that episode, I'll be delving into the mysteries of Crescent Lake, while Ani unravels the ghostly tales surrounding the iconic Hollywood sign. It's a double dose of spooky storytelling that you won't want to miss.
And it was so fun. I didn't participate in the creation of either of those stories, so I just got to be one of our listeners, but also get to participate in the discussion.
It was fun.
You're going to love Ani.
I feel a little bit bad because Ani got to experience firsthand what it's like recording an episode with us, which is basically us interrupting her beautiful storytelling every couple of minutes. You know, she's like, the way she really gets into the storytelling vibe, and then hears us piping up with some stupid question or comment.
Yes. You know, she's definitely, you turn on a podcast sometimes and it's like, you find your mind wandering because maybe the voice doesn't, she has you. I'm wondering if she told a very stupid, boring story, I think it would still be intriguing.
Oh, she can, if I die, she can give my eulogy.
You need to stop talking about that.
You know, it's just I'm really tired right now.
And you just want to die.
And death is like a big nap. Hey, it's a big dirt nap, especially when you are the dirt.
Yeah.
So for now, let's turn our attention to the fascinating history of the American funeral home. From furniture makers becoming undertakers to the development of the modern casket, Ani guides us through the transformations that have shaped our approach to death and remembrance. So sit back, relax, and prepare to be captivated by Ani Khajadourian's The All-American Funeral from Audibly Haunted. Enjoy the episode.
At one point in our lives, we have all attended one. We dressed in our mournful black attire and headed out the door to state one last final farewell. Funerals. It is a practice performed by humans since the beginning of time. Humans are the only creatures that walk God's green earth that give that very special final send-off and even bury their dead. Even all the way back to ancient times, you had Egyptian priests practicing and praying tradition over the dead. Even on the other side of the world, pagan rituals would be performed to honor their dead as they send them off to the other side. But the funeral services we know today are vastly different from those of yesteryear. Today, as we say farewell to our loved one, we enter a chapel where the casket sits at the very front. All the mourners enter and sit upon the chapel pews, awaiting the family to enter and deliver their eulogies. At times, even a wake is performed a couple hours before the service. Then, the casket is moved outside to the burial site, and we lower our loved one into the ground for an eternal rest. But what if all of those resources, from the funeral home to the funeral director, were nothing but a dream? These were options that simply did not exist within small towns and communities. Imagine, you step into a cozy 19th century parlor within a family's home where the family members, not professional undertakers, would gather around the body of a loved one, preparing them for their final journey with care and respect. In these intimate settings, death was a deeply personal affair, embedded within the fabric of family life. This marked the beginning of a tradition where the home served as the primary space for mourning and farewell. Urbanization and the rise of industrialization prompted a move away from these home-based funerals and towards the establishment of dedicated funeral homes. These specialized facilities emerged to meet the demands of a growing urban population, offering a more organized and formalized approach to handling the deceased. The transition from home to funeral home represented not just a change in location, but also a shift towards a more structured, professional, and impersonal method of managing end-of-life services. This week, we turn the focus on the changes that made the American funeral services what they are today. From undertakers turned funeral directors, coffins turned to caskets, and family parlor rooms turned to funeral parlor rooms. So, let's dive into that. Welcome to Audibly Haunted. I'm your host, Ani Khajadourian. The conditions of life in the 17th century in the United States were, well, not the best. To the point that 40% of children in society did not reach adulthood. With death happening so often, the most profitable material produced by the colonial press was mourning broadsides containing eulogies for the deceased within the morning papers. Mourning broadsides were sections in the newspaper that would announce a death along with the eulogy. Sometimes the broadsides would feature a poem instead. The most famous mourning broadside was that of Abraham Lincoln. The headline read, "The Nation's Loss, a Poem." Below his drawn image stated, "Who departed the life in Washington, D.C., April 15th, 1865. It featured a long poem about Lincoln's ascent to heaven and his legacy left behind. Before the funeral home, there was, well, the home, where the individual passed away. During Puritan funerals, they tended to be silent, somber affairs. The night before the burial, friends and family of the deceased gathered at the house of mourning to partake in a viewing or at a time of watching over the body to make sure that the deceased did not awaken. This action led to the term we all know now as the wake, meaning to watch over. Nowadays, a wake is done 1 to 4 hours before the funeral services and burial. And instead of making sure the dead doesn't wake up, it is a time used for family and friends to say their last goodbyes. Death was a part of the everyday within the early 19th century. With it being so, well, commonplace, it affected the way that homes themselves were constructed. In more wealthier homes, a false death door was placed off the parlor. It led outside to be able to remove a deceased family member. It was deemed improper to take a body through the front door, where the living entered and left the home, as was it taking the body out feet first. Before the 1810s, when someone passed, there was only one place to take the body, and that was from the bedroom usually, well, to another part of the home. People who died at home had their bodies laid out in the family's front room, often called the parlor. They would be held there until it was time for the body to be buried. This usually happened within 24 to 48 hours, with techniques like embalming not being widely used. Bodies had to be buried pretty quickly before they began to decompose. When it came to caring for the dead, there was a specific group that came together to care for the loved one. They were the town's women. Women were in charge of preparing the deceased, Many communities had groups of women who came in to help with the laying out of the dead, who were then placed in the parlor. Though while the women cared for making the dead look like they were simply sleeping, who exactly was taking care of the next steps? When death occurred, a family turned to their neighbors for help in so many ways. Women descended upon the family to assist in prepping the body to look presentable by dressing the dead in their Sunday best. But what about the next steps? What about the burial and the coffin? This is where the simple neighborhood wood carpenter and furniture makers come into play. These individuals, who were always men, were asked to take up the task of building simple coffins and arranging the practical parts of a funeral. In fact, in rural areas, if they had a horse and cart, they also provided transport. Then, friends and family often walk behind the cart in a procession. Then they carried the coffin off the cart to the local churchyard for burial. The history of the American funeral undertaker reflects a profound evolution in both the role and perception of funeral services. Early American communities were largely self-reliant, and the preparation of body and funeral were managed by neighbors or tradespeople like carpenters and blacksmiths. These early, now known as undertakers, were primarily concerned with practical matters, such as prepping the body for burial and constructing simple coffins. As America moved into the 19th century, significant changes in urbanization began to impact the funeral profession. The growth of cities and the migrations of populations from rural areas led to increased demand for organized funeral services. This period saw the emergence of professional undertakers who operated more formally than their predecessors. They began to specialize in the preparation and transportation of bodies, as well as planning each step of the funerals. The need for embalming techniques, influenced by the Civil War's need to preserve soldiers' bodies to return to their families, further shaped the role of the undertaker into a more structured profession. Even coffins had a facelift, turning into what we know today as caskets. Even though the terms coffin and casket get tossed around together, they are vastly different. The coffin typically has a more traditional design with a tapered shape, wider at the shoulders, narrower at the feet. This shape allows for a more natural positioning of the body, often in a semi-reclined position. In contrast, a casket, on the other hand, is generally rectangle with a consistent width throughout, offering a more uniform and modern appearance. Caskets are often equipped with a hinged lid and may include plush interiors, padding, and a range of ornamental features that cater to contemporary tastes and preferences. The design of caskets tend to emphasize both aesthetics and comfort, reflecting a shift towards a more personalized and elaborate approach to funerals. The switch from undertaker to funeral director is a more direct reflection of the increased responsibility involved in directing every aspect of the modern funeral service. The transition from undertaker to funeral director gained momentum in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. This period marked a shift towards more formalized and professional funeral services, driven by changing societal expectations and increasing urbanization. funeral directors began to offer a broader range of services beyond body preparation and burial. They took on roles that included planning and coordinating every aspect of a funeral, from transportation to memorial services. The establishment of funeral homes as dedicated facilities for managing these services became more common, reflecting the growth and specializations of the profession. While there is no exact timeline that states when the term funeral director was used, in contemporary America, funeral directors are recognized as essential professionals who provide the comprehensive support to grieving families. Their responsibilities extend beyond the traditional tasks of body preparation and funeral planning to include grief counseling, pre-need planning, and a wide array of personalized services. The role of the funeral director has evolved to encompass a deep understanding in both the practical and emotional aspects of dealing with death, ensuring that the entire process is handled with sensitivity, respect, and professionalism. This evolution from the early American undertaker to the modern funeral director illustrates a significant shift towards a more organized, empathetic, respectful, and client-centered approach to funeral services. As the world of end-of-life care evolved, from the changes emerged the American funeral home. The evolution of the funeral home is woven with a haunting tapestry of intrigue and transformation. Picture the early days of the 19th century when funeral homes were emerging from the shadows of private homes and makeshift arrangements. Families, weary from the death of a loved one, would seek solace in these new establishments, where the undertaker's profession began to formalize. These early funeral homes, often adapted from old houses or converted shops, seem to hold an air of melancholy with their dark wood paneling and somber decor. The transition from a home-based affair to a dedicated funeral space was as much about convenience as it was about creating an atmosphere that both comforted the grieving and celebrated the dead. As the clock ticked into the 19th century and early 20th centuries, the funeral home's reputation took on a more unsettling character. The art of embalming, which had originally been a revolutionary advancement in preserving the dead for transport, began to cast a chilling shadow. Imagine a time when formaldehyde and other chemicals became commonplace, the very substances that would later stir a public fascination with the macabre. Funeral homes, now equipped with elaborate embalming rooms, became the focal point of stories and whispers. Tales of eerie chemical smells and mysterious processes fueled a sense of dread and unease. As the cold, clinical environment of the embalming room contrasted starkly with the warm, comforting image the industry sought to project. By the mid-20th century, the funeral home industry faced yet another haunting twist as corporate entities began to dominate. Large chains swallowed up smaller family-run businesses, transforming the intimate, community-oriented experience into a commercialized machine. Stories began to surface of unethical practices, with families feeling the sting of price gouging and mistreatment. In the heart of these bustling, impersonal funeral homes, whispers of mistreated remains and the soulless pursuit of profit created an unsettling atmosphere. The very notion of greedily profiting off the grief seemed to haunt the industry, casting a shadow over what was once a solemn rite of passage. Yet, even as the industry grappled with its haunting past, a new dawn began to break. The funeral homes of today strive to escape the ghosts of their former selves, embracing transparency and a renewed focus on compassionate care. Modern funeral homes offer a range of personalized services, from eco-friendly burials to extensive grief support, seeking to mend the rift between commerce, profit, and empathy. As they move away from the dark history, these establishments aim to provide solace and support in a way that honors the dead and comforts the living, striking to banish the shadows that once loomed over their profession. Just as the world adapted, shifted, and changed, so did the American funeral home and the end-of-life care. It took a form that left behind the extra burden on families and moved matters into the hands of professionals who are there to lift some of the stresses. Humans will, until the end of time, honor and bury their dead. Nowadays, you even have options of different kinds of cremations and so many different eco-friendly ways to rest. Death is a hard subject for many, but I think there is an importance in learning about it and the world built for it. Yes, funerals are the moment created to lay one to rest, but there was something I was told that just stuck with me. The soul has left, and all that remains is the vessel. Funerals are not really for the dead. Funerals are really for the living. This has been Audibly Haunted, and I'm your host, Ani Khajadourian. You can find Audibly Haunted wherever you get your podcasts. Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, you name it. So give it a listen and drop a rating or a review and tell all your friends. And remember, you can always find Audibly Haunted on Instagram at Audibly Haunted. And if you have a ghost story that you would like to share, I would love to hear it. You can always reach out to me at audiblyhaunted@gmail.com or send me a message on Instagram. I would love to hear from all of you. And I'll see you all next week.